What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are here with the return of Superior Spider-Man. And at the end of this video, I will have a link to the playlist that has Dan Slott's entire Spider-Man run, starting with Big Time, running all the way up to Clone Conspiracy, which includes Superior Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse event. So it's pretty hefty, 17 years of Spider-Man. But when it came to Superior Spider-Man, while Dr. Octopus kind of muses here, we could kind of explain what was going on with the nature of his character. So the way Superior Spider-Man worked is that it actually took place in a story called Dying Wish, which was kind of the thing that kicked it off. And the way this played out was that Dr. Octopus was essentially dying, right? Literally, his body was just shutting down. It was hyper-aged, all kinds of stuff. And so as a last-ditch effort to both save his own life and defeat Spider-Man, he basically swapped bodies with Peter Parker, and he took over the body of Spider-Man, and Peter Parker was forced into the body of Dr. Octopus. Now, there was a little bit more than that. You know, there was like kind of a fragment of Peter Parker's consciousness, which lingered for a while and then eventually went away. The coolest thing about Superior Spider-Man is he initially started off as a bad guy, and then he became a superhero by the end. It was really cool. And in fact, there was a line of comics that I don't think we covered called Superior Foes of Spider-Man. I think that's what it was. Let me know down in the comments because I can't remember off the top of my head. Switching back to the moment, he makes his way to like this old lab that he used to have with this kind of containment device, but he doesn't quite recall what it was that took place that led to this containment device's creation or anything in the first place. And so he kind of takes a little bit of a trip down memory lane, and it's a way for us to learn what's going on. And so what we do here is we jump back to a point after he became Superior Spider-Man, and it kind of seems like it's at that moment when he's on that precipice, right? He's kind of becoming a good guy, but not quite a full-on good guy yet. He's still just like a jerk that talks to people with a level of hubris, and it's hilarious. But what he does here is he actually starts asking his spider bots what it is that's going on throughout the city of New York. Now, that's one of the things that made Superior Spider-Man a better Spider-Man than Peter Parker, in the sense that instead of just like swinging around the city looking for various crimes, that what Dr. Octopus had done is he had created spider bots, which at all times were canvassing the city of New York, alerting him to various crimes that were going on. Some of which he would tell them to alert EMS. Sometimes he'd tell them, alert the cops. Other times he would be like, I'll go respond to it. And this is one of those instances where there's just like a villain who's doing villainous things. And because he's bored, while he wouldn't normally go after this guy, at the very least, it gives him something to do. And so what he does is he comes across this villain who, if you've read Marvel Comics for any measure of time, this guy's name is Slide. But basically the way he works is his suit allows him to move on a surface with friction as if he is frictionless, right? So in effect, he's almost impossible to touch, right? If you try to grab him, your hand will slide off, right? He can like turn on a dime. He's incredibly agile. He was a really cool character that never quite got a lot of respect within the realm of Marvel Comics. But the funny thing here is that Superior Spider-Man already knows who this guy is. And that where he kind of puts off this idea that like he's going after him the way that Spider-Man traditionally would, trying to find some way to get his hands on him or something along those lines, it kind of gives Slide the impression that he has the upper hand, only to have the rug pulled out from under him. Because what Superior Spider-Man says, and this is a testament to how intelligent his character was, he's like, I know that I can't touch you. I never had any intention of putting my hands on you. I've just been steering you. And because of your stupidity, you were none the wiser to the fact that it was happening. And literally just like, because this guy is effectively sliding on the ground, what Superior Spider-Man did is he made a ramp out of webbing, and then this guy just slides up the ramp and flat out into the water. And because he's frictionless, if he stops moving, he'll sink down into the bottom of the Hudson. So he basically tells him like, take off your suit and it'll save your life. That's one of the big differences, is that Peter Parker would have tried to find a way to save this guy's life. Superior Spider-Man is like, look, man, if you decide to become a villain, you pay your money and take your chances. And there's no guarantee that I'm going to even care enough to save your life, right? Superior Spider-Man was pretty hardcore, right? He was pretty intense. It was kind of nuts. But of course, what this does is it switches over to the aftermath. This slide's basically been webbed up. But what Superior Spider-Man did is he stole the tritium that Slide had on him, as well as taking his suit. So it's one of those things where he's still kind of doing nefarious stuff. Now, it's not outright villainy. And again, that was a big difference between Superior Spider-Man in terms of how he started versus where he ended. This is kind of at that point where it's just sort of like the ends justify the means, right? Like, if my goal is to do something genuinely great and good, then who cares how I get to that point? Because society will be better off for it, right? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, and morality is a concept for lesser minds. That was just how his character always functioned. Whether it was right or wrong is really kind of left up to interpretation, but having that just sort of nature to his character always made his stories fun. And that's why he says here, right? Like, with the supply of tritium, I may finally realize my greatest scientific breakthrough. A miniature star grown under laboratory conditions, a controlled fusion reactor generating limitless energy. It could power the world, revolutionize science, make me rich beyond the dreams of avarice, so I can create other marvels for the betterment of humankind, of course, right? So again, he's not a straight up villain, but he is kind of doing some villainous things. And so that's why he said Superior Spider-Man is more of an anti-hero than a traditional superhero. And so with this taking place in the moment at Horizon Labs, he ultimately ends up taking a whole bunch of stuff back to this secret laboratory. Now, what's Horizon Labs, right? As a quick aside here, Horizon Labs is a think tank, not that dissimilar from like Reed Richards' Future Foundation. Of course, Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with the name, but it's basically a giant think tank. And the way this worked is that during Dan Slott's run before Superior Spider-Man, when Peter Parker was just his normal self, he became part of Horizon Labs, and their charter is to just think up really cool stuff for the betterment of society. But if you think up dumb stuff, they'll kick you out, right? So it's kind of interesting in terms of how it works. And so ultimately he's met with like Grady Scraps, who is just kind of a goofball. He's really, really smart, but kind of a buffoon at the same time. And he's kind of accused of like stealing stuff. Nothing major going on here, right? He just kind of lies to him and says, well, it's my stuff, but it's in Horizon Labs boxes, get out of my way. Now, at that point, you switch over to Empire State University. And for those of you guys who have never read Superior Spider-Man, you're introduced to the person that was actually the catalyst that led to him becoming a good guy. This person, of course, being Anna Maria Marconi, and she developed a solid fan base in the Spider-Man mythos. There are people who love her character, right? Because she's a diminutive woman, and she's the person that initially was looked down on by Superior Spider-Man, not trying to make a joke here, but in terms of him just kind of looking at her, he saw everybody as being less than him. But she was one of the only people out there who would just outright challenge him, right? And like, what makes you think you're as smart as you believe you are? And so because he respects a person who's willing to challenge him, as well as a person who is as intelligent as he is, it led to exactly what you think it would. He fell in love with her. And so the result of this is that he ended up kind of changing his ways and becoming a hero. Now, this kind of takes place while they're still in love, or at least while he's trying to court her in his own weird Dr. Octopus way. But it's just kind of introducing her character to us as the reader and anybody who's not familiar with Superior Spider-Man. But what he does here, and even what she suggests, is like, maybe you should like have other people, right? Or something along those lines. And where initially is pitching the idea of just kind of being like, I mean, like, should I work for you? His response is like, no, like, absolutely. Has nothing to do with your size or anything like that. But the reality here is like, I want to spend more time with you. And so if you're working on this whole project thing, that's not going to happen. Because the thing to remember here when it comes to Spider-Man is nobody knows his identity as Peter Parker. Precious few people do. And it had been that way ever since the events of Doctor Strange wiping everybody's mind of Peter Parker's identity after he revealed it during Civil War. And so as far as this whole situation goes, he's quote unquote developing technology for Spider-Man. That's kind of the ruse that he uses here. And so as this whole project goes, his stance is, no, I don't want to hire you on so that you can work on with, Spider-Man on these projects, because I want to spend time with you. I should hire somebody else. And that's when he brings on a girl named Estrella Lopez, right? Who is actually an intern, or at least was an intern at the Future Foundation, Reed Richards' whole think tank, meaning she's incredibly intelligent. And so just because of the fact that she like pitches her level of intelligence and whatnot, he's just kind of like, yeah, we'll bring you on, right? And you'll be the person to aid me in this entire project. Now, as the two of them are working together, they start to realize that this project of trying to create a miniature star is incredibly difficult, and they fail every step of the way. All the while they're in the process of like running out of tritium. So they only have so much to work on. Not only that, there comes a point when Estrella gets back to her lab and she's basically told by one of the spider bots, hey, there's a new suit for you in your locker. And when she puts it on, it's basically a Spiderling suit. The Spiderlings, by the way, were basically Superior Spider-Man's own henchmen. That's really all they were. And so they kind of carry out his bidding. The issue here is that he needs more equipment that was not readily available at Horizon Labs, but is available by Advanced Idea Mechanics, right? An offshoot of Hydra that branched out to do its own thing and focuses on conquering the world through technological means. This basically leads to like the Spiderlings and Superior Spider-Man fighting against Advanced Idea Mechanics, which is not the most significant thing, but it is kind of cool to see. And that what he ends up doing is that once he gets into their facility, they basically kind of take apart a machine that was being used to basically focus on particle and theoretical physics and so on and so forth, and they take it back to his lab. During that time, they get as close as they have been to developing this miniature star, only for it to basically start losing cohesion. Literally, it's a bomb that's about to detonate, but because of its mass and because of the amount of energy that it has, it'll wipe out everything within a quarter mile. So he ends up putting it in this kind of stasis device, right? This containment that we saw at the very beginning of this story. And then in turn, because they're running out of tritium, there's one last shot. And so what ends up happening is he's just kind of musing with himself and trying to figure out why it is that he can't seem to pull this off. The response of Estrella is like, have you tried using the inverse of the harmonic frequency to initiate the core reaction? What that means, I have no idea. It's Greek to me. I'm sure somebody out there in the YouTube comments on this video will be like, here's exactly what it means. And if you do, feel free to post it, man, because I guess it means like reverse of something. I don't know. I'm not a science guy. But what's funny about this is Dr. Octopus steals the idea as his own. He's like, what if I use the inverse of the harmonic frequency? And then like his henchmen are like, yeah, man, good job, boss. Which was kind of par for the course when it came to like Superior Spider-Man. Like, he was a dick. He would steal other people's ideas, and it was hilarious. And so because he's quote unquote come up with this idea on his own, he says like, let's celebrate, right? So he basically reserves a table for two at Tavern on the Green, which is a pretty legitimate spot. And then in turn, he invites Anna Maria Marconi, which pisses off Estrella to no end because she thought she was gonna get the invite. And he's like, not really. And so the result of this is that while you have Superior Spider-Man meeting with Anna Maria Marconi and then just kind of having dinner together, right, a romantic night, Estrella goes back and just tries to launch the experiment on her own and basically be the one to develop that technology and then take credit for that technology. The problem is that in true Spider-Man comic sense, the whole thing goes sideways, right? She ends up dropping the entire device, just this energy goes everywhere, and power shuts down to pretty much all of Manhattan. And so when Superior Spider-Man gets back to the laboratory, he ends up finding out that like Estrella is basically powered by a star. And this is an astronomical amount of energy, right? This is one of those things, it's always kind of funny the way that Spider-Man comics do this. You don't really have Peter Parker fighting against villains that like have the ability to alter reality. And with Superior Spider-Man, Dr. Octopus, it was pretty much the same way. The Inheritors were about as far as you got with regards to like some astronomically powerful multiversal force that represents like a true and definitive end to any and all Spider-Man in existence, right? Like that's about as far as you got. What was a kicker here is that this girl is extremely powerful, right? Right now, with the level of power she has, she could annihilate pretty much any superhero on Earth. Thor, maybe, I'm a little finicky on that. The Incredible Hulk, I'm not 100% sure, but like somebody like Wolverine, she'd reduce him down to his own skeleton, right? Like she could kill the entirety of the Marvel universe. And we know this just by way of the fact that when she fires off a blast of energy that takes virtually no real effort on her part, she blows multiple holes through these just huge layers of durable materials. Of course, right, Human Brain, the machine that helps to assist Superior Spider-Man, ask anybody if they care for a tasty beverage. But this basically represents the fact that the amount of energy and heat that she's letting off is basically the power of a star itself. She's not as hot as a star, but she can be. And that's why she's one of the most dangerous people in existence. Because she's kind of like Johnny Storm, right? The Human Torch, the ability to become as hot as the sun, presumably. We don't definitively know, because what ends up going on here is that Dr. Octopus pulls a ruse. And the reason why is because Dr. Octopus crawls into the containment device that he had previously placed the star in. And the reason for this is he tells her, like, you're moments away from exploding and taking pretty much all of New York with you, right? Like the 5 boroughs, everything. And where she initially thinks he's bluffing, him crawling in there comes with a statement. He says, I need to find a place that will keep me safe from your blast. And the result of this is that she comes to realize that he's actually telling the truth. She goes in there and attacks him, only to find out that when she shoots him, it was a hologram that was created by a spider bot, that Dr. Octopus was actually outside the room. He immediately locks the door, and then he tells her, like, yeah, so I mean, I wasn't lying when I said that you are going to explode. That's true, but it'll happen someday. And with the level of power you have, you're basically a walking, talking star. So it'll be about like 3.5 billion years before that happens. So you're gonna be stuck here for like the next 3.5 billion years in a giant vault with nowhere to go and no means of escape. So she's literally trapped there. And so the result of this is that you basically have him and the Spiderlings that just kind of like shut the whole project down. They scrap it and then walk away, leaving her there with no belief that like anybody's ever going to stumble across it. Dr. Octopus returns in his normal form, and while he doesn't really recall all the details and everything that's going on, he does know he needs to open the vault to figure out what's inside of it, what it was that had happened here. And when he does, Estrella emerges. But the cool thing about this is that she sees Dr. Octopus, and Dr. Octopus sees her, and he recognizes her as Estrella, and that's when it all floods back to him, the whole experience and everything. And he begs her not to kill him. But then as far as she's concerned, it wasn't Dr. Octopus who locked her in this vault. It was Spider-Man. And in true, ridiculously fun Spider-Man comic style, her whole stance is, I'm gonna go kill him. I'm gonna go kill the web crawler. And like Dr. Octopus is like, yeah, death to Spider-Man. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Make sure you guys click this playlist to cover the entirety of Dan Slott's Spider-Man run. It's phenomenal. And I will catch you all later. Peace.